I had many requests to do like a foggy scene, how to paint fog, and I want to show you a different way of painting trees, right? And so I want to make like a nice forest. This perspective is going to be interesting because it's going to be looking from like a little bit from either across the river into like a mountain of forest. So it's not going to be like a straight landscape kind of scenery. It's going to be, the trees will be here, you know, and then some fog right here, and then bigger trees up here. So it'll be interesting and fun perspective. I'm really excited about it. And so we're gonna learn how to paint a fog and some different kind of trees, and maybe add some color to the trees as well. So I have an example here. This is a painting I did years ago, and it's a scene. You could see there's some trees and fog right behind it, and then you could see some darker trees here. So we're gonna do something similar like this, but maybe not exactly. So it'll be a little bit different. You could already see that this is a square canvas, and this is a 16 by 20 inch canvas. So we're gonna take the idea and create something like this. Let's jump in and go straight to it with materials. Like I said, I'm using a 16 by 20 inch canvas, and I bought this canvas. It already has white gesso on it. Sometimes people like to put more layers on it, and like we talked about the canvas types, and if your canvas is cheap, it could be a little bit harder to work with, but so I prefer a little bit more of a better, you know, feel for the canvas, so it could be softer, right? But if it's not soft and you want to add another layer, you totally can, totally up to you. I usually just go straight to it, and then what I do is I quickly add like the base coat, and then I go back and add more details on top of the other, and the more you add, the more it'll come to life. So this is a canvas that is not too expensive, but somewhere in the middle there. So this is what I have here, and today we're going to be using the 24 set that we have here. And we're going to be using these colors today, and you could use any acrylics you have available. You know, totally experiment, see what you like best and what works best for you, and I'll show you exactly which colors we're going to be using from this set. We're going to use titanium white, of course, lemon yellow, yellow ochre, orange, emerald green, viridian, hooker's green, and lamb black. And if I use any other colors from the set, I'll show you what I'm using, okay? For brushes, we need a couple of these blending brushes, and these are exactly the same, just different color. We need couple of these artist slot brushes. This is a number 8, and this is a number 4. We need any 1/2 inch flat brush, and any detail brush. We need a palette, and I'm using a palette paper because it's easier to, once you're done, to just bunch it up and throw it away than to try to clean, you know. And then we need a palette knife. We need some paper towels or tissues, whatever you have available. Of course, we need a water jar right here, as you can see. And if you have this, I like to use a hairblow dryer to dry out my first coats once I'm done with the background, so I can continue working. Totally up to you though. You don't need to necessarily have this. You can take a break, and acrylics usually dry a little bit quicker, so about, you know, between 15 to 30 minutes it'll be dry. And that'll be all for materials. We can go straight to our canvas and start mixing our palette and start to lay down our first coats. So I like to first quickly, like I said, get a quick sketch of the background, like the fog and the darks and the lights for this particular scene, right? I'm going to add, like we saw in the picture, it's mainly lighter here, and then it gets a little bit darker around the edges. So we're going to add quickly a quick blend of, you know, lighter colors here, and create some lighter colorful green shades and you know, other kind of shades, and go into a little bit of a darker tone here around the edges. That's the plan for our first layer, and then we'll start adding our faraway trees, closer trees, and all that fun stuff. So let's quickly pick up our titanium white, and we're gonna create, I would say, about 4 piles of colors. And so I'm gonna pick up my palette and create 4 piles. So I'm gonna lightly squeeze about, you know, roughly about 2 thumbs amount of titanium white. I'm gonna do that for this as well. And then each time I'm gonna go a little bit less. So maybe a little less here and a little less here. Something like this, okay? Now let's pick up our orange color and add a little bit right here. Very small amount, as you could see. And then emerald green. And let's add it right here, a little more here, about this much. Okay. Let's pick up our viridian color here and add a little more here, like this. Okay. So we got the lighter colors, right? Now let's do some darker ones. So I'm gonna pick up Hooker's green, and I'm gonna add it about right here, about this much, like this. Okay, and then we're gonna add maybe another pile right here, a little smaller. Lamb black, and let's add it right here. This one will be our darkest color. Okay, now these are very dark, so I'm gonna go ahead and add a little bit of lighter colors to them, and then we can start mixing. Let's add emerald green to this one and to this one as well. So like this. Okay, all right, let's quickly mix all of these and then see what colors it gives us, and then and if we need to add more, we will add a little more of whatever color we want. But this is a quick, you know, I'm guessing a quick background blend that I want to see, the colors that I want to see. We're gonna obviously add more on top of it, but let's quickly mix it. So my palette knife here, and I'm gonna start with the lightest and mix this, and it gives me a beautiful light orange color, as we could see. Really quickly, this part doesn't need to be you know, you don't need to spend a lot of time mixing, because this is a quick background blend like this. Okay, our next color here. There you go. That's beautiful. And then our next color, a little bit of white and viridian. Looks very nice. I like it. So you could see it's a little dark still, so I don't want it to be too dark, so I want to add a little more white, okay? A little more white to this one, because I like this color, but I want to lighten it up. So a little more, as you could see, just a touch more to lighten it up a little bit. And quickly mix it all in. like this. Very nice. And then our next color, maybe even take part of this if you want. We're going into our darker colors, darker tones. Right there. Okay, and our final color should be the darkest, but not too dark. We don't want it to be very dark yet, because once we start adding trees and details, we want it, you know, the background to be looking a little misty. But for now, this is good because we can always add that, and I'll show you how to add fog. It's really fun. So there you go. So we have a quick, you know, blend of our colors, background colors. Now we can start, and I'm going to leave this white because I'm going to add some areas where I want the fog to be, and then, you know, it's all going to blend in, so it'll look a little messy at first, but we need that cover our canvas first. We need that, okay? So here we have it, and I like to always clean my palette knife so the colors won't dry, and so I'm going to quickly clean it out like this, very quick, and we can go ahead and start putting our colors down onto our canvas. So I'm going to pick up one of my blending brushes, it doesn't matter which one, and I'm going to dab it in the water right here, our water, and dab it all the way. And then squeeze a little bit out, make sure it's nice and damp, and it has a little bit. See, if I squeeze very hard, you could see all that water coming out, right? But we want some water in there. That'll keep the paint from drying too quickly and gives us a lot of time to, you know, to work on blending with a little bit of water. If you added too much water, you will be able to tell when you pick up the paint and start adding water. Water will start to kind of drip, and it's a little too much water, so I'd recommend just squeezing a little bit more out and continue working. But that's not a big problem. So we have our water right here, right? So I squeezed it out a little bit, not all the way. And I'm going to start with my lighter color. So my lighter fog is going to be up here, like I said, and it's going to go darker around. So let's pick up white first, really quickly like this. Remember, our brush has some water in there, so not all the white, just take part of it, right? And roughly start adding it. So I'm going to add it right here randomly, you know, and the way I like to, I can feel the paint running smoothly on my canvas, and you could see there's no water dripping. That means you have a perfect amount of water in your brush, so it works really nicely. But if you feel a little bit roughness going into your, a little bit, you know, hard, then I would recommend dabbing the tip of your brush into the water and then picking up more of your colors. So I'm going to randomly add it right here, maybe even go up here. You don't see it much yet, but something like that, okay? Now I'm going to keep doing that, adding the tip, just dabbing it like this lightly into the water, and then I'll pick up my next color. Let's pick up this orange, and let's add some orange in here for fun. You can see a lot of water there going on, so I'm not going to dab my brush in the water yet. So I'm going to pick up more orange and maybe add it red in here. Something like that. Okay, since my brush has a lot of water, you could see, I'm not going to dab it in the water. I'm going to use this green next and add it right in here, mix it all in nicely. So maybe some in here, some of this green, and mix it in with the white. Maybe pick up some orange and take away a little bit of that water. Okay, and now we're going to add, actually continue using this green. Let's add it right in here. Cover the white, it's okay, don't worry about you know, covering the white. It's just our background colors first. So quickly cover it all roughly like this. Some more orange in here, maybe in here. Okay, and then more green, and I want to add it red in here, a little more green, like that. Okay, now let's pick up this color and add it right in the corner, right in here. My brush has water in there, so I'm not dabbing my brush too much in the water now. And I'm gonna now take the remaining lighter colors and add this color in here, like this. Okay, something like that. Now my brush is getting a little rough, so I'm gonna dab my brush just the tip in the water, very small amount, pick up this green and add it right in here roughly, like this. Okay, and don't worry if you have some paint left because we're gonna use it eventually. Maybe pick up this green and add it right in here like this. And then dab the tip lightly in the water and your final darkest color here. Let's cover this area dark. Maybe mix it in, it's okay. Mix it all in roughly, like this. Okay, now we have quickly added our darks and lights. You could see it. It's a rough blend. Now I'm gonna pick up my second blending brush and work dry. Okay, my brush is dry. And I'm gonna start with the lightest areas right here and blend all the lighter areas in lightly, and I'm pressing lightly and swirling. And we're gonna focus on the specifically how to blend, you know, on our next lesson. Focus just on blending, but you can also learn from these lessons as well. So I'm gonna lightly press, and remember, don't worry about this. This is, even if it creates some, you know, we're just taking away brush strokes, even if it creates some nice, you know, green transitions and other kinds of transitions, leave it. We want that. So you could see I'm lightly pressing. Okay, lightly pressing and taking away and swirling and taking away the brush strokes. And also, if you notice some, you know, hair, especially if your brush is new, you will notice that. That's very natural. If you have some hair coming out of your brush, right? Because the hairs are very fine and soft, so they'll naturally do that, especially in the beginning. But the more you use it, the more it'll, you know, fluff up and work better. So you could see one right here. I'm not gonna try to pluck that out. I'm gonna leave it there. I'm gonna focus on blending everything first, because while my brush, my paint is still wet, this is the perfect time to do that. Leave those hairs there. I have one right there. I'm gonna leave it because once the painting is dry, I'm gonna use a hair blow dryer. It'll easily come off. You can just slightly scratch it and it'll come off easily. So that's not a problem. Okay, and I'm gonna continue blending these colors really quickly. You can see it's working very nice. I'm carrying the paint all around, swirling it. I like that orange glow. So I'm barely pressing the canvas, okay? And let it naturally blend. Even if you carry some darks around, that's totally fine. There is no right or wrong. You can see I tapped into the darker tones and I'm starting to carry it to my lighter ones. That's totally fine. Now you can move around and do this. I'm painting sideways, but I usually walk around my canvas and you know, blend everything in nicely. So see what works and best for you, what is more comfortable for you, okay? and barely pressing. Barely pressing. And don't worry about blending it too perfectly, because this is our base coat. We're going to come back and add our fog and trees, so a lot of this background might be covered. We just want a quick blend. Barely pressing. And there you have it. A quick blend right here of our background. So while this background dries, I'm gonna quickly clean out my blending brushes so they won't sit in the water too long, and then we will finish drying it out with a hairball dryer if it's still, wet, and then we'll continue. All right, I have a new water, my brushes are clean, and now this is almost dry, and so I'm going to quickly finish drying it with my hairball dryer. All right, we have a quick blend of our background. It's dry, and then now some of the hairs that were on there was a couple, they flew out naturally, but then some, I wanted to show you an example, like for example this one didn't come out all the way, right, this hair. So you just lightly, since the background is already dry, you're not damaging anything, so you just lightly scratch it off and then just peel it off like this, and it comes off without damaging anything. There's one right in here, and it comes off. There you go. That's if it's bothering you, but sometimes it's fine to leave it because this is just a background. We're gonna add more trees and you're probably not even gonna see it, but that's how I usually do it. And now our background is clean and dry and ready to go. Now we can focus on adding some details and shaping out some of our trees. You can see I have some colors left here. I don't want it to go to waste, so I'm gonna lightly, blend all of them together. Actually, first lighter ones. I have some here, maybe this one as well, right? Pick all of them up and put them here, and then maybe this dark one. Bunch it up so that it'll, last longer, right? Because I think I want to use these. So we have, and if you ran out of the colors, it's very easy. Just you can look back and see how we mixed these colors to get these, but it really doesn't matter. So basically what I'm gonna do now is start adding in some of my, trees, faraway trees right here on top corner. And then we're gonna add some trees here along the way, maybe some longer ones here, and then just work like this. Add some trees in the background, and then add maybe some more trees here, and then we're gonna add some bigger ones, okay? But let's add the details of the top trees here. So I'm gonna use this color. So actually what I'm gonna do is take, because I like this green, right? But I'm gonna take maybe a part of it and mix it in with the random colors I have left. Let's see what it gives me first. Okay, it gives me this lighter kind of green color, which is fine. I think I can work with it. So basically this part doesn't matter. What matters is that you have a little bit lighter colors, not too dark, because these are a little bit further trees, right? So we're gonna add some darker ones up close up here, right? So we don't want to have it too dark. You can see this is dark, but it's not like very, very dark. But we're gonna need to use that for the, shaping out our trees, some of them. So what I'm going to do first is, I like this color. I'm going to look and see if it's, so I want to make it a little darker than our background right here. So I'm looking right here and seeing if the color is darker, and if it's a little, actually almost very similar. So this color isn't good for drawing our trees yet, but this one, let's pick it up and see if it's good enough. So this is a good one to start with, okay? This green one right here. So let's, maybe even what we could do is take part of this dark one and create another shade. Maybe take part of this lighter one and make it a little lighter. I don't want it to be too dark. So this is good right here. It almost looked like a dark, like a lighter gray color, but leaning towards green. Okay, right there. So let's start with this first, these colors. All right, and then we'll add more colors, but let's use some of these. And again, what I'm going to do is clean my palette knife. And actually, before we continue, I'm going to create one more color for fun. I want to make this lemon yellow. I'm going to add it a little bit in here like this. Okay, and then I'm going to mix all that in. Mix all this in, maybe part of it in with this yellow. I want to add a little bit of the color onto my leaves. So it gave me this lighter, bright green color right here. Okay, I clean my palette knife like this and start to shape out my trees. So what I'm going to do first is pick up my 1/2 inch brush, okay, right here, and dab it in the water right here. Dab it in the water all the way. Make sure it's nice and damp. I like to squeeze it after I dab my brush like this because it really soaks in the water. Okay, so we have our water in our brush a little bit and made it damp. And what I'm going to do first is I'm going to use this color that we mixed right here, this in between this green and this color, right here. So you could see it's like a gray green color. Okay, I'm gonna pick this color up, going back and forth lightly, and then I'm gonna start drawing some of the trees, faraway trees, skinny ones. So this one is going to be up here, and then maybe there's a thicker one that's going to be up in here. So I'm not going to make these too big yet because I want them to now here, this is where the fog will be, so a lot of it's going to disappear. Okay, so I'm not gonna, maybe there's one that's going sideways like this, like that. Okay, continue drawing. Maybe there's one right in here. Like this. Like I said, doesn't really matter where you add yours. Okay, now let's add a little bit the darker ones. So this darker color here, and let's add a few bigger ones right in here. I'm gonna go ahead and add up right. I'll have it end somewhere in here, so I'm gonna go. So when your brush starts to be not, running on your canvas roughly, add your brush, dab it in the water, and continue So this dark color again, right? We're gonna make it a little thicker, but not too thick. And we're gonna have it disappear. Okay, so I'm gonna do a few more. I'm gonna do one right next to it. And I'm gonna go make it sideways a little bit. Make it a little thicker, but don't make it too thick. These are further ones, further trees. And then one that is right in here. Using this color. And then another dark one. I want it to go down further, so I'm going to make this go down about here. So I'm going to go straight down like this. Yours could look a little better than mine. And straighter if you wanted to make it look straighter. Totally up to you. Okay, next I'm gonna pick this color up, continue adding more. So this one I'm gonna make it right here. So these are further trees, okay? Now I want to add some crooked ones that are like this, that are falling sideways. Something like that. And then maybe there's one next to it going straight up almost. And continue on with this color. Maybe there's some further ones. Something like that, okay? I'll stop right there, maybe add a few more skinny ones, who cares? Like that. Alright, and now what I'm gonna do is clean out my brush. I'm gonna go like this, back and forth, so that I won't damage my, the tip, and so I'm kind of like painting in my water to clean the paint off. Okay, like this, and dab it lightly onto my paper towel. Just dab it so it won't be too wet. And now we're gonna use some of the lighter ones. So let's use, remember this green that we mixed right here? I'm gonna pick this color up and create some lighter ones. So maybe add it onto some of these. Okay, lightly. So dab my brush in the water again, use this green and lightly add really quickly. So it almost creates a nice glow, green glow. So I'm gonna add one. You see, that's a lot of water here in my brush, but that's okay. I'm just gonna clean it, dab my brush onto my paper towel again so it wouldn't drip like this, and continue with this green and add one that's maybe going like this, who knows. And then I'm going to add some in here. really quickly. All right, we don't want to spend too much time because this is our background. We're going to be adding more details, so quickly add your highlights. Maybe let's see what we got here. So now what we're going to do is, so I'm going to put my flat brush down. Let's pick up our our detail brush right here, dab it in the water all the way, and we're going to draw using this color. Going to draw some branches so that our trees won't be so naked, right? And this part you don't need to worry about trying to make it perfect. Very easy, go back and forth because we're going to cover it with our Artist Loft brush. We're going to add more branches later, but for now use this color and quickly on the side, go back and forth and create some skinny branches. Okay, maybe there's one right in here, but not everywhere. So with water and swirl your, the tip of your brush and so here I'm going to switch over to the darker color. So I'm going to dab my brush again in the water and use this darker color because these are a little bit more closer. And lightly connect some branches to some of these trees. And we don't want to spend too much time yet on adding details of the branches, okay? Add a few to get an idea. So I'm not even going to go down. I like how it ends right there. So I'm going to leave that there and maybe add a few in here. A lot of it's going to be covered with our Artist Loft brush. I'll show you how I draw my details on the branches, okay? So now here I'm going to continue adding a few more branches. Some could be thicker. I like my brush always to be a little damp so it can run smoothly on the canvas. So maybe some here. I'm not going to go all the way down. Since this is bigger, I'm going to add a little bit of bigger branches right in here. And continue that idea all the way. Don't go all the way down, okay? A little bit on the top. Dab my brush in the water, continue. Here it's going to get a little darker. Okay. All right, we have a quick sketch, right, with the top trees. Now I'm going to clean my detail brush so it won't dry off. Just lightly. I'm not going to dab it because that'll damage my brush, but lightly clean it out against the wall of your, and pull it upwards like this and leave it wet, and I'm going to just set it aside, okay? Set it aside, and let's pick up our number 8 brush right here, okay? And what I'm going to do, this is the fun part, what I'm going to do is create some, using these colors first, I'm going to create some, leaves on and things on our trees so that they won't be so naked. Okay, so let's use this green, this one right in the middle, and I'm working dry. As you can see, we don't need to make our brush damp because it'll create a nice effect. So you can see I picked up some paint like this, and you can see on the side of your palette, you can see the shapes start to form of the branches and things, right? And that effect is very beautiful. So we're going to take part of that, part of the paint, and then we have not too much paint right here, and what we're going to do is start following the branches where we added our the branches. We're going to add around some of these, maybe even on the side right here. Cover this like that, right? Cover it, and lightly dab your brush. Use the corner, go back and forth, use the corner of your brush, and maybe even it goes down right in here a little bit. There's some branches coming out like that, right? And go back and forth, have that shape going on. So use this green. Let's add some right in here. Maybe some in here. I'm not gonna cover everything because I like to see some of the branches be a little bit sharper, but I'm gonna follow the branches, some of them, and dab that nice green color in there lightly, okay? So you could see here it comes down like this a little bit. Okay, maybe in here. Very lightly. Something like that. Maybe far away you won't even see. Maybe there's bushes and far away, branches that stand out. Who knows? Like this. Okay, maybe there's some right in here. I'm going to keep this area a little bit empty. Maybe add a few branches somewhere in there, but not too much. But I want to keep it a little bit empty because I like how it looks. Maybe this is a fog going up there, up the hill. But I'm going to add a few. And now here, since the trees are becoming darker, let's use this darker color right here. And it's okay if you bring some of the green in and mix it in with the dark. That's totally fine. So I'm going to make sure I don't have too much paint, and lightly, barely press and add some darker ones. Okay, so maybe there's a darker one right in here. And go back and forth, shape it out. Use your right of the tip, left of the tip on this side, right on this side, and play around. Don't overdo it though. Leave some areas empty. And you can take your time, no rush. This part, you don't need to rush. So I'm going to add a few more in here and have it fade out like this. I want my bottom to be a little bit naked. Okay, maybe make this area a little darker. And continue that same idea with this darker color. Some of it's going to be covered, and you want to keep that in mind. Some areas you want to keep darker, and some areas you want to keep lighter. Okay, so that'll create a nice depth and of your piece. So we're going to add a few more right in here. You can see that creates a nice effect. So this one is a bigger tree, right? So we want to add more to this tree. But we don't want to cover too much. We want to see some branches, okay? And maybe add a few more. Have it fade out like this. Okay, continue. I'm going to add the darks in here, maybe a little bit. Quickly. Add some in here. And lightly go around, and don't cover too much, but this area I want it to make it look busy, so I'm gonna go back and forth adding random ones. You know, some bigger, some smaller. And dab it in there. And then, of course, fade it out on the bottom right here. Okay. This one I'm going to use a little bit of the lighter color. Let's use this green. Go back to this light green and add in the light green in here. Maybe there's some far away light green ones out there somewhere. Okay, and that light green randomly. And add some of the darker ones in here. Make this a little bit, cover this area a little bit more. Let's pretend there's a little one right in here. And so instead of drawing everything out, what I'm gonna do is use this green. Let's just use this green, and it's okay if it's mixed with some darker ones, that's totally fine. Let's use that green and let's add it, you know, this is where you can decide, but I'm gonna add it right, I'm gonna add it right in here. Let's shape this tree going in like this. Okay, and it's gonna fade out somewhere in there. Fade it out to this nice fog color. And of course this is our you know, we're gonna go back and I'll show you how to add more fog if you want to our trees, but we're quickly shaping everything out, and you know, it fades out. You could use your finger if you want. On the bottom right here you could see a nice fade right there. Maybe let's add a few more. So this is the fun part. So now you can get your colors, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pick up my yellow ochre, and let's use, and I'm gonna quickly add a little bit onto my paper palette right here, just a small amount, not a lot, okay? And then let's pick up orange and add it also small amount on the side, okay? And then lemon yellow also on the side. That's good for now. We could always add more if we want. So I'm gonna clean my brush since it has a lot of paint in there and a lot of darker colors. I'm gonna clean it out into my water right here. And remember, I am cleaning it by going back and forth, swiping it in my water on the bottom. I'm not dabbing like this because you're gonna, you know, damage your brushes, especially the more expensive ones. So you have to take care of them, and they'll last longer. So really quickly clean that out, get most of your water out like this, and then with a paper towel, dab it and get the water out of your brush, and it's going to be a nice damp brush. So right here, nice damp brush, doesn't have that much water, right? Okay, so now we're gonna mess around with some of these colors. Let's use this color straight out of the tube, right? We're gonna add a little bit of our, let's pretend this is like a, almost like a fall scene, right? Like there's a lot of color in our branches and on some of the trees and things like that. So we want to create variety. So let's pretend like there's some color right in there, far away, lightly. Press it, and you know, let's pretend there's some coming out like this. You know, maybe these are bushes. Maybe these are not necessarily trees. Maybe these are more rounder trees. Who knows? Lightly dab that in, maybe even go up a little bit like that, using this color, and okay, and we'll continue with this color, and let's add some of this color, you know, balance it out, play around. Maybe there's some in here. Lightly dab it right in the background, create some color. Who knows? Maybe there's some in here. Go up a little bit too. Okay. So I'm going to add some in here. Dab it in there like this. This creates a nice, interesting, effect. And maybe have it fade out like this. Okay? Fade out randomly. And there's going to be some bigger trees here, so don't focus on, spending too much time on this part. Maybe there's a little bit in here going in lightly, randomly. We don't want to make our background too boring and plain, so we're going to add a little bit of color. And some in here. Okay, very quickly, once you're done adding your details there, we can go back to the orange. I want to add a little bit of orange I want to add it right in here, maybe make this a little more colorful and brighter. So straight out of the tube, the orange, and lightly go back and forth. Remember, use your tips, and I'm not pressing hard, and I'm skipping some areas and making some areas stand out a little more than the others. So there's no right or wrong how to do this, okay? So we'll fade that orange somewhere in there like this. Maybe there's some orange in here. But I like some of this background green color, so I don't want to cover too much. So something like this is nice right here. Okay. Now I'm going to go back to this. I'm going to make some of these areas a little bit. So remember this color, we mixed lighter color here. And maybe use this color and add it a tree, going in like a little bit of the darker one. Let's pretend it stands out from the fog. And then maybe it goes in. There's some darker ones in here like this. Okay. And I'm going to have it fade out like this. So I'm going to switch over to this yellow color. Whoops. Clean it out a little bit too much color there, darker color, which is fine. I'm going to clean it out lightly, dry it out on the paper towel, and we are starting fresh again. And what I'm going to do is choose a lighter color. Since now it's going into the lighter, very brightest area here, we want it to make it look bright, right? So what I'm going to do is use this yellow color and maybe mix it in with my yellow here, so that it gives me that bright yellow, and maybe add that bright yellow, mix it in with your background. Randomly. Maybe add that yellow in here. a little bit. Go back to this orange. And maybe lightly dab some in here to let it fade out like this into the white gently. And then here you can continue on with this color and dab it lightly in here. Let's pretend this fog came in really strong right in here and it goes down. So something like this. Continue with this yellow color. And let's have it fade out in here. I'm gonna create some of the, let's use a little bit of this green color. I want to add a little bit of green in here. Mix it in, and it's okay if you cover some of the trees, you know, the bottom, because we're going to add fade, make a fade, okay? And I'll show you how to do that, but first we're creating some branches and things far away. Okay, something like that. So here I want to make this a little bit darker here like we did with this tree. So what I'm going to do is use some of this green color and create some darker ones. Maybe little ones like this. Let it fade out like that. So use this green, maybe even go to this grayish green color and make some darker ones. Who knows? Lightly press, have it fade out like this. So I'm going to add a few in here, a little bit darker. Something like that. Okay, and then here as well, I'm going to continue with this color and maybe add some in here. Maybe it's covering some of these. And fade it out, drag it down. Something like this. I'm going to leave this in here like that. I like this green here, but maybe use this darker color, maybe even some orange. Why not, right? Mix it in. Dab my brush lightly, just a tip in the water, because it's starting to, you feel it starting to dry out, right? So a little bit of water helps keep from, from drying. And let's add a little bit of the orange in this darker color and make this a little darker and busier here on some of these areas. Okay. Just this corner. And randomly go back and forth. Maybe make this area a little bit more colorful. But leave this area right here. I like that. I like that it's, you know, mist is going in right in there. Oops. No worries. Clean my brush out real quick. Dry it out on the paper, on the paper towel, and then let's use this in a little bit of yellow. Have it even come in here, that's totally okay. Add a little bit of that yellow in here. And blend it in with your background. Let's continue adding some of this, you know, effect going down right in here. So let's add so this orange, I want to use a little more of this orange, maybe mix it in with this yellow, and this is where you can play around. There's no right or wrong, and create color into some of these areas. So this area I want it to be a little bit orangey, so I'm gonna have it fade into this color, but I don't want to cover everything because I like that fog going in here, right? So add that nice orange color. And maybe it fades out somewhere in here. Who knows? Remember, we're gonna add more trees here, so I'm not gonna cover everything. We're only covering some areas. Okay. Now we can come back to this green color right here, this darker tone, and add a little bit more green on some of these branches. Clean it out a little bit. And it goes down here and it fades back into this color, background color, like this. Who knows, something like that, okay? And it goes down, and then here we're gonna create some more trees, okay? So we can stop right there, maybe even add a little bit more right here on the bottom, like that. Okay, we'll add more details later. So for now, we have this side covered. We can work on adding some details. These are the further trees in the back before we add bigger ones and more darker ones up in the front here, okay? So let's add some detail now. And what I like to do is, I'm gonna pick up my, first of all, I'm gonna pick up my smaller number 4 brush, dab it all the way in the water, squeeze it so it could be nice and damp, right? And what I'm gonna do is add a little bit of white. With the white, I'm going to, since my brush is damp, it's gonna be a little wet, you could see here. Maybe even mix it in with this green a little bit, right? A little bit like this. And what I'm gonna do is some of these, like this tree right here, I'm gonna just let it go down and let it fade and put that white color going up like this. Okay, and let it fade to the dark. Don't go all the way up, but we want to add that lighter color and having it fade going down like this, okay? You could see that. So I'm gonna use a little bit of this color to smooth this area out a little bit. Okay, something like this. And it fades out to the lighter color. So play around with the white and this light green that we have here. And lightly bring it down. It's gonna fade in somewhere right there because of the fog. Okay, I'm gonna do the same thing to some of these other ones. So my brush is dry. When your brush is dry now, just lightly pick up some more water, not too much. Okay, and play around with these colors. Whatever color you want to use. I'm using this lighter green. And do that on the bottom of some of these. Maybe not on everything. Maybe some of them keep them going darker. So for example, I'm going to use some of this darker one, and this one I want it to keep going. So I'm going to have it fade in. Maybe this one as well. Right, so totally up to you. And have it fade out like that. And you can even add some more faded ones. You know, as much as you want. And then maybe add a little bit lighter ones from this tree. And now I'm gonna clean my brush a little bit so it wouldn't be so dark, and dab it into my paper. I always want to say paper plate, paper towel. Okay, and my brush is still damp a little bit, so I'm gonna use this green and mix it in with the white again. And I want to add some of these, maybe there's some faded, very, very faded ones in here. So I'm gonna, you can barely see them. Oh, maybe there's one in here. Something like this, right? Very, very small, faded, barely, barely. You can see some of these, okay? In the background, maybe there's one that's going in like this. Something like that. And maybe a few more. The same idea, maybe somewhere in here. And then add some branches lightly. You could see barely. All right, so now we can add some darker, bigger ones, okay? And actually, before we continue, I also, if you want to even go more into detail before you add more, trees up here, what I like to do is first lay down all my trees and get a quick sketch of the layout of my trees like this, and then I go back and detail everything. But if you like to focus on one area at a time and then work your way, you could totally do that too. So if you wanted to do that with a detail brush, dab it in the water, and with your darker color here, play around with some of these colors, swirl it, and with water you can go and connect some of these branches and make some of them, add more branches to some of these. Totally up to you, and spend as much as you want time on them. These little details make your painting stand out. Okay, you get the idea. I'm gonna continue, and I can always come back and add my branches and things, little details, maybe even skinnier trees far away. You can do so much in the background. Okay, I will stop right there. I will come back to that later, but you get the idea. So I like to kind of quickly lay that everything down and then go back with the details. Okay, so I'm going to clean my detail brush, and we're going to continue laying everything down first. So this is what I added. Hooker's green, a little bit of that, plain as it is, straight from the tube, and then a little bit of Hooker's green and lamb black right there. I'm going to mix that in, and this will be our darkest color for our closer trees. We're gonna quickly blend that in like this. So you see a little bit of the green, but it's very dark, okay? So now I'm gonna always clean my palette knife so I won't have paint drying on it. Now, what I'm gonna do is pick up my 1/2 inch brush, clean it out, and then dab it onto your paper towel, and we're gonna draw some closer trees, okay? So with this darkest color here, our brushes, we can even dab it in the water a little bit so it can run smoothly. Right in here, we're gonna pick it up, the paint. I don't want too much, I'm just getting it onto my brush. And you don't need to spend that long, I'm just showing you what I'm doing. Once you have your paint, let's decide where we want the closer trees to be. Okay, I like to decide with my biggest tree. So I want my biggest tree to be right, let's say right in here. I'm gonna have it go straight down, maybe at an angle, so it'll look more interesting. So I'm gonna start from right in here, right? That's where I'm guessing I'm gonna have my biggest tree. And have it come down all the way. Something like that. And you know, as you go down, you can make it a little thicker if you want. So we want these to be a little thicker. Something like that, okay? And we can come back later on adding the details, but let's lay out where we want our tree. Now next to this, there's one that is a little bit crooked and it's going down. I'm gonna have it come down from here, this angle. It's coming down. I think I'm gonna do it even not higher. Why not? Let's make it a little higher. Let's have it go from here down like this. Okay, it's at an angle, as you could see. Something like that. And there's some far away ones in the background. We'll do that later, but I'm gonna dab my brush in the water and decide where I want my other trees to be. So next to that one, I'm gonna have, you know, one that is a little bit shorter. Like this. And then one that is next to him, also at an angle. Something like that. Make it a little bit thicker. And we're going to add more details right here, but I want to make some of these trees a little thicker. So now we're going to have some lighter ones right in here. But let's continue adding. Maybe there's one that is right in here, a skinny one, but this tree will be unique. Let's make this tree look a little bit unique, different than the others. Let's attach a branch here. Maybe there's a branch right here like this. I'm not going to spend too much time with this darker color. We're going to add the lighter ones later. Alright, so a few more darker ones. Maybe there's some right in here. Okay, and a few more. And maybe there's one right in here, somewhere in there. Okay, so now I'm gonna clean my brush, and I'm going to add, you know, a little bit of, let's go back to this color, remember? That we added here, and let's add, dab it in the water. And I'll add a few more. Maybe there's one right in here. Have it fade out. Okay, dab it in the water so it can run smoothly. Maybe there's some far away ones, who knows. That. You decide. Something like that, doesn't matter. Maybe there's some little ones here. Alright, and let's add one that is above here. I want to make it stand out, so I want to make it, I want to add this one. Let's add it right in here. Let's go up this high and have it fade out like this. Okay. So now I'm going to put my brush and pick up my detail brush, and let's just use this color for now and create some branches. So this one is a little further back. So I'm going to go back and forth and create some smaller branches really quickly. Same idea like we did with the other one. Dab it in the water. Let's use this dark one. Right, this one's going to be one of our biggest ones. And then this one as well. These are gonna collide together. So you can see I'm quickly, drawing, shaping out how I want my trees to look. But I do like that, green going down, that foggy green going down, right? I want to leave some of them, so I don't want to cover too much. But add some of these branches here. And then kind of like we did here, we want to add a few on the bottom, but not too much. Something like this, okay? We sketched it out, now we know the layout of our closer and darker trees. Now we can clean our detail brush and do the same idea how we did with the other trees. So I'm going to clean my number 8 Artist Loft brush, make sure it's not too wet, so I'm going to dry it out on the paper towel so that it won't be, so it'll be just damp, okay? So I'm gonna dry it out so it's not too wet. You could see right there. And first thing, I'm gonna start with the lighter ones in the back. So you could see these darker ones up here. I'm gonna cover them later. Let's cover the lighter ones first. Okay, so let's start with this one right here. Let's go back and add, let's go with this green. I like this green color. It's not too dark and it gives us a beautiful color. So here I'm gonna make this, you could see I'm barely pressing. Sometimes it may be, if it's easier for you to switch to number 4 Artist Loft brush, go ahead and do that. But you could see I'm barely pressing the corner and playing with I'm adding more of it in the middle, but then I'm spreading it out. You know, skip, don't make it too even, skip some areas and, you know, add your, maybe make some of these a little bit wider and have it fade out somewhere here. Okay. So if I want some of this to be a little bit darker, I'll go ahead and use maybe this sap green because it's pretty similar to that one, but a little darker, right? I want to add a little bit darker right in the middle, right in here. Create some shadows, and then maybe have it fade to, you know, this lighter color here. So there. For now that's good. Let's continue. Let's add, I'm gonna add a little more orange, okay? I wanna add some color, some of the orange right in here. So no need to clean your brush. Mix it in with the green, that's totally fine. So let's add a little bit of the orange right here on some of these trees that are in front. But I don't want to cover too much. This is like a background, right? Background color. So quickly dab that in, go all the way down if you want. That orange. Okay. I'm going to add some orange in here. right, and then maybe a few on this branch right in here. Remember this one? And randomly bring some of it down right in here. Maybe make some orange highlights on the bottom right in here. Who knows? Does not need to be perfect. Okay, something like that. Let's play around with this yellow that we have here and maybe add a little bit yellow in the background right in here. We're randomly adding our background colors, and then we're gonna add the dark ones up front, okay? So that's what I'm doing. Even if you have a little bit of, you know, darker ones in your brush, that's totally fine. So something like this doesn't have to be perfect. Fade it out. Okay, and leave some of these empty. I like this glow here. So now we quickly added some more color. We can start adding a little bit more, you know, darker colors. So let's start off with adding. Let's start off with adding this green, this Hooker's green. And let's add it right in here. I want to make some of these darker, so this will be our dark one, but not too dark. And cover some of these areas really quickly. Maybe this one as well. There's some branches coming out from a tree that is not in the picture. Okay, something like this. All right, let's continue and add this green to this tree right here. Let's have it be right in here. Leave some of these branches showing. Maybe make this taller. have it go off the canvas if you want. And fade it out, because now it starts to blend in with our, almost like our background color, right? So we are going to add the darks in a bit. All right, now we can add the darker one. So I'm gonna use this black, the darkest color, and let's have fun. Start with this one right in here, and let's create our darkest tree first, and then we'll add the details. Make it, you can see I'm lightly pressing. We want to start very small on the top. Maybe these trees didn't get much fog on them. You can see I'm following my branches where I added roughly. Okay, this goes down a bit here and covers part of this tree behind it. Now this tree and that tree is going to collide, so it's going to be very dark in here. But we want that. That'll make our painting stand out very nicely. And as you go lower, you know, it's going to go less and less. Okay, so the branches here are getting heavier, and it goes a little bit less and less. Something like that. Okay? We'll add more details later. Let's continue and adding more branches. How about this? Let's do this one right here. Using the tip, you can see I'm playing around with my brush, and not going to cover too much of this area. Some of this part, bottom part, could be darker. I want this tree a little bit darker, so I'll add some darker shadows in the front here. Add a few darker ones in here. And if you add it too much, you can go back and forth with your orange and your other colors that you have here on the palette and play around with your shapes, okay? Totally up to you. But I'm going to continue. Remember this one? We don't want to forget about this one. Let's make this a little higher. This one will be our tallest one. Have it connect and collide. Okay, this area is going to be very dark because they are collided together. Maybe this branch goes out a little bit. I'm lightly pressing and following my branches. Remember that. You can always add more extra branches as you go down. But it's nice to sketch it out really quickly like this, then you can see a better picture. See, I'm adding a little bit less each time as I go down. Follow some of these background trees. Maybe some of them are not, don't have a lot of branches on them. Who cares, right? There's no right or wrong how you paint your trees. Continue on with this color. Maybe mix it in with a little bit of this green. Play around with these colors, and let's add this tree. Remember here? Let's add some details on it. Maybe it doesn't have that much. So I'm going to skip a few. Maybe it's a little bit naked, like this. So I'm gonna come back to the darker one and follow. Maybe there's a tree up here, kind of like these trees right here, right? Maybe there's one right in here. You know, this area is going to be dark. So you can fade it in there. Same thing here. We're going to create some branches maybe from the side of this area. You can't really see them, but they're there lightly, and cover this whole area, dab it in there randomly, and create a dark area right in here. I want this to be a little bit darker. Okay, I want this to stand out here. This light fog to stand out, and I'm gonna create a darker area right in the middle. Now you can play around with a little bit of Hooker's green. You know, you decide where you want your trees and branches to be, okay? So I'm gonna add a little bit of orange and add a little bit of this orange right in here. Continue adding it right in here. Maybe some in here. And we've got this green. Remember this lighter green? Let's add some of this lighter green. Maybe mix it in with the yellow and add a little tree that is in here, a little brighter one. Dab it in there. Doesn't have to be perfect. We're just creating now highlights. Okay, a little more of this green color. Bright green color. Okay, so we got a quick sketch of the whole idea of how we want, you know, the fog and the trees to look. Now we can go back and darken some of the areas and fill some of the areas and make them a little bit darker to make this fog stand out a little more, right? So for example, like this area, I want this corner a little darker fading into the slider area, right? So I'm gonna go back and for example, I added more black just straight out of the tube, and my brush is a little damp. I'm gonna dab it lightly in the water, and I'm gonna randomly add some darker ones right in here on top, and kind of almost like pulling it down a little bit because I want it to be faded into the colors I added, right? So maybe go down and, you know, add your darker tones on some of these trees. Okay, to make them stand out a little more. Maybe add a little bit of the darker ones right in here. Very few little ones, so it could really pop out. Right? Maybe some in here. And if it's too dark, you can wipe it off with your finger. Want this area to look faded, right? So this area, what I'm gonna do is, now my brush is a little bit, you know, has that dark colors. I'm gonna darken this area by blending, pressing a little harder and blending some of the colors in lightly. So press a little harder, and right in the middle, blend some of that darker in, spread that out, you know, evenly. I'm going to leave this area glowy. I like that. And of course you can go back, change your brush to number 4. And I'm going to add a little bit of this darker color. A little bit, maybe mix it in with this other color that we have here. And darken some of these further ones. Go back and add your highlights and make some of them stand out a little more. Right? And of course you can add some, you know, branches, and maybe there's a lot of things growing in the back here, right? So I'm going to add some branches here, lightly, you could see. And if it's too much, that's okay. You can always dab your brush in the water like this. I didn't like that. And wipe it off like that, gently. A lot of little ones in here in the back one. Far away. You can see now it's starting to become more like a forest scene. That's what we want to make it look. Just go back and forth. Maybe let's add a lighter one, maybe with this green. Let's add a lighter one right in here, like kind of like this one, for fun. A light one. Have it fade out like this. And have it fade out. Very nice and easy. You could switch over to your detail brush and create some details. Connect some branches. Remember, like I said, now you can go back and with the darks and the lights and go back and really start to connect some of these branches randomly like this to your tree. Now with a detail brush, this is where you can go back and detail your branches, you know, connect some of them. Like for example, see this area, it's not connected, so you can go back and connect it like this, okay? And make it more, you know, more look like more branches, and you know what I mean? So always dab your brush in the water and go back and add as much as you want. We went a little higher here, so make sure to connect that. Right? Quickly do this. You could spend more time, you know, doing this process on you as long as you want and as much detail as you want. Totally up to you. Okay, so it's just water. And this darker color. Maybe even add some detail, some more details in here. Anywhere you want it. So I'll do that until I'm happy, okay? Go over all these trees that we added here and add as much as you want. But I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna try to do every little detail and have you watch. You guys get the idea. Maybe even go back in here and add some in here as well. Okay, totally up to you. The more you add, the more it'll stand out and you'll see the picture clearly. And I always recommend you to step back, take a look at it, see what you need to correct, and then come back and attack it, So, for example, like after I'm done adding all the details on this, right, I'll take a look and step back, and I see that this tree is a little bit bigger, right? This one right here. And so what I'm going to do is go back and clean it out a little. And the way I do it is very simple. You just go back with maybe a little bit of this yellow right here with the white, right? Mix it in. Doesn't have to be perfectly. And correct it, clean it up a little bit. Skip some areas, clean it up. Maybe on this side as well. Make it a little skinnier. Right? So, and then maybe you can even add, since this is the brightest area, follow along some of these and add, some highlights on your trees with water. And a little bit of this white and yellow color right here. Okay? It'll really start to make your tree look 3D. Maybe even add some of the details, on the branches. Like this, like with the black. Maybe on some of them. So maybe even continue with this. And on the left side of your trees, always dabbing my brush in the water, that way it'll run smoothly. Maybe a few in here. And maybe here there's some lighter trees. Remember this one? Maybe here it's connected and there's some lighter branches here from this tree. You just go all the way down. There is no right or wrong how you draw your trees. Okay, something like that. All right, and like I said, you could go on and on detailing. I'm gonna clean my brush, and now I'm gonna use my number 8 again, clean it out a little bit, and dab it onto your paper towel. And let's add a little bit of this green and yellow, bright yellow, mix it in, and I wanna add some in here. I want to fill it up a little bit more in here. Remember, we added some of our trees. I want to make it a little bit more busier here. Okay, maybe even go down here and dab it in and fade it out. Okay, and you can use your finger to blend it out. I wanted to connect some of these trees here, so it won't look too, straight change to those other trees there. Maybe even here. Lightly press some of this color. Okay. And if you added a little too much, very easy. You just go back with the white, for example, with the white, and cover. Make it a little bit smoother. But I'm going to continue, maybe add some right in here. Have it fade out. Maybe even add some right in here. This tree, remember this tree? Maybe add this lighter green. And randomly add it in there. You know, something like this, okay? Maybe even add a little bit of that lighter color. Remember, we ran out. Add some of this lighter color maybe in here, okay? Make some of these stand out right in here. Okay. So I'm going to continue here. Go back to this orange and feel like I need to add a little bit more in here. Okay, something like that. And then you can go back with your detail brush and draw, maybe use some of this green, not too dark, but basically you want to draw some skinny ones right in there. You could see starting to shape up really nicely. Right? That's what we want right there. Some of these trees in here. Maybe this one goes down. A little further. Now I want to make this background a little darker, so I'm going to go in and add whatever color you have left that is darker, but not too dark. And this bottom part right in here, right before it gets to the lighter ones, I'm going to add some darker ones. And kind of, you know, spread the paint around. Something like that. Okay? Maybe even bring it down a little bit in here. And then here you can do the same thing, darken some of these areas. Maybe even use a little bit of this black. That's fine. Spread it around so it could look interesting. Okay, maybe even go higher. Okay, right there. Now, before, and then of course you can, with the detail brush, you can go back and draw some of the darker ones right in here. You know, connect the branches to the lighter colors and make it stand out a little more. You see how that works? It really starts to stand out. here, instead of, you know how we did the opposite from darkest to lightest here because of the fog. Here we're going to do the opposite. We're going to go dark here and fade it out like that. Okay. So we'll add this tree. Make it a little darker. Something like that. And again, you can add branches and things. Okay. Now, this part is how you can create and fix. For example, like I showed you how you could use either number 4 or number, or number 8 brush, clean it out completely and make sure your brush is dry and not dry fully, but it is a little damp, right? I'm gonna dab a little bit of white, and you could see my brush is wet and it works transparent because of water, right? And so now I can go back and add the white and make some areas stand out even more. So wherever I want it, the fog to be. So I'm swirling it, blending that white in. Maybe even add that white right here in the middle. Okay, like that, randomly. Totally up to you. And I'm not gonna add too much, but that's if you wanted to make it a little more brighter, because I like the way it looks right now. But I like this area. For example, this is a little bright, so I'm gonna use a little bit of titanium white, and my brush is damp with water, and I'm gonna just cover it with that. You see how it works? It makes it faded. Maybe even cover this a little bit with that white. You can press a little bit harder, it's not going to damage, but do make sure your background is already dry before you start to do that. Okay, and I want to make this stand out a little more going down here, so it can gradually disappear, right? Gradually disappear into the fog, something like that. Now it's more, balanced. It's a smoother transition. Okay, so you could do that, the whole fading into the darks, right? But also, if you wanted it to make some areas darker, I'm gonna use the orange again and a little bit of black. So I'll show you exactly what I'm gonna do. And you could use your blending brush to do this part, right? To do, let's actually do that. I'll show you, because you could use your number 8 brush and I'll show you. For example, it's a little damp, right? And you could use your damp brush. Here's some orange. You can see there, I have water in there and a little black. Mix that in. Okay, it's gonna give me like this brownish color, dark. And I'm gonna go around, you see this light tree here? I'm gonna go around and add that dark around like this, randomly around it. Because that creates like depth, shadows, and these trees stand out a little more. So I'm gonna draw it in like this really quick. Maybe even add that, this dark color, not too much, you could see, in here. Blend it in like this. It'll really start to make your painting come to life. Yeah, you could use your finger if it's too rough, and just blend in the areas where you want it to look a little more darker. And then it really starts to make your painting stand out. So you could do that with this brush, right? Like I showed you. Or you can go back, and I sometimes do this. This is my clean number, my blending brush, right? I'm gonna dab it in lightly in the water and squeeze it out. I don't want too much, okay? I want it to be just a little bit. And I'm gonna do the same idea, take part of it like this, just a tip of it, right? And now I can swirl and add the darks where I want it to be. I want this area to be a little darker. So I'm gonna blend that shade in, even go a little bit in here. I want this a little darker, this area. So with your orange and a little bit of black, not too much, see, my brush is still wet, and I'm gonna cover some of the areas where I want more darker tones. And that'll really start to make your fog stand out more and more the more you add these. So I want to add some in here. You can see how that's working. And because this area is a little bit darker, maybe bring it down right in here. And maybe some in here in the corner. Right? I'm going to leave this area because I like how it looks in here. I'm not going to mess with that area too much. You can see I'm leaving some areas because that's what we want. We want only certain areas to pop out and stand out. Okay, so a few more details and I'll call it good for this piece for now. Maybe go inside and here in this tree. And I don't want to cover that green, beautiful green, because it's very nice, but I want to darken some of the background area right here, because I really want this to, you know, be dark going into this nice lighter color. So I'm going to do a little more, and if your brush starts to dry out, which it lasts a long time because water on this brush lasts a little longer, but if it does, just dab it in the water lightly and continue where you left off. And you could almost dab it and play with it. I want this area a little darker here. And I'm just dabbing it, maybe even dab some in here. Okay. I'm going to make this a little bit more darker in here. Okay, and the same thing with the white as well. You can do the same thing. Clean it up all the way. Make sure you don't have no darks in there, right? Squeeze it out. You know, squeeze most of it out, okay? And use whatever color you want. For example, if you want more of this green in here, you can totally come back with a green color, you know, the emerald green, for example, and you can add that and play and lightly with water add some of the color in your, you know, in your painting. But I'm gonna add, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add a little bit of white, right? A little bit of white and touch of yellow, not too much. And I want that I want that glow effect. I want to add it on some of this area right in here. Same idea. Maybe add some in here, a little brighter. You can use your finger if you want, but I want to keep this area darker. I'm going to lighten this area a little bit. Take away a little bit of that sharpness, and that's how you create fog. Okay, like for example, make that tree faded. Just add a little bit of the white and cover some of the areas where you want the trees to be a little lighter. Okay. Okay, I'll be done for today. Like I said, you can spend time blending, getting the dark shadows with your blending brush or an artist lock brush. Totally up to you how it works best for you. And remember, once you have the picture, you can really make the fog stand out more by adding the darks around your corners or the air patches of your painting. That really makes your painting stand out. And you can also play with colors. For example, you could do the orange and add the orange in here, the glow effect with your blending brush slightly with water like I showed you, and add the greens, make this a little, totally up to you. Have fun. Even the blues, if you want to add some blues in there. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. This was the basic layout of, and a little bit of the detail onto our trees. Now I can come back the next day, take a look at it, and add more details to my trees, maybe add more highlights, as you could see with the lighter white and maybe a touch of yellow right here, these highlights on the trees that makes it really stand out a little more, right? Just go back and detail everything, and totally up to you. Again, thank you for being here. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Stay tuned for more. Take care and God bless.